one of the things that happens when you're running all night is you end up doing a lot of thinking. And I've been listening to a lot of debates and podcasts and whatnot through a lot of different debaters, left, right. But the one thing that struck me interesting was Christianity versus humanism. And humanism, it's just another branch of atheism, which is a religion in itself. I mean, it's, if you practice it religiously and you believe it in your core, it's your religion. But there was a one I listened to actually last night that struck me as kind of odd. And you ever have one of those moments to where you can just kind of you just know the debate's over? That was kind of the way it was. Let me see if I can find the guy's name. Okay, so the first one that I listened to was Matt Delahanty, something like that. And the dude was just an arrogant prick. He came in with this whole word salad, this intellectual word salad. And they're debating Andrew Wilson. And Andrew Wilson, love him or hate him, he's amusing. But he basically just turns your argument back to you and asks you why. Well, the guy comes out with this word salad. Andrew just comes out with his own opening statement. The guy freaks out, calls him all sorts of names, and then storms off. Okay. So, yeah, that was a good end to that. But then the second one was Dr. Richard Carrier. And the dude's just an intellectual mess. Now, don't get me wrong. He's got a lot of intelligence. Apparently, he's very versed in history. Very smart man. Unfortunately, his worldview has allowed him to remain ignorant on how the world works. Wisdom and intelligence are two completely separate things. And don't get me wrong, he was very intelligent. The problem is that everything to him was just an intelligent word salad to just basically show everybody how smart he was, that he had it all together. But the problem that I suddenly discovered with humanism is that it dead ends itself. It dead ends itself into basically debauchery. It's the same problem that libertarianism has. You know, when you have total free reign and you expect people to act to their own self-best interests, it just goes into, it just turns into chaos. There's no order. And what ends up happening with things like that is a leader will always rise out of the ether. It doesn't matter. No, everybody's supposed to act on their best self-interest. Well, that only works up to the point you're forced not to. And so he's talking all intellectually like people are going to follow these preconceived notions that he has. But then he turns around and says, you're all allowed to do anything you want as long as it's what I believe is right. Well, then you don't. But the problem I have with humanism, not just that, is it's basically the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek for nerds when it comes to humanism and libertarianism. They're both intellectual dead ends. I mean, they basically leave people open to their own devices. And what happens when you leave people to their own devices, they destroy themselves because there's no boundaries. And human nature is such that you have to have some sort of boundary, some sort of bar, some sort of limit in order not to destroy yourself. And that's what these people don't want. They want to do whatever debauchery they have in mind without any consequences, what it comes down to. Any perverted thought, they don't want to be judged for. And it's basically that. But then they come up with all these names and all these theories and all these hypotheses. But the problem is they're concentrated on the way things should be, the way they think things should be, but not the way things are. And they don't understand that their ideology depends on controlling everybody like a bunch of slaves in order to do what they think they should be doing. People, by their very nature, are competitive. People, by their very nature, are selfish. People, by their very nature, are going to look out for number one. That's why capitalism looks so horrible on paper, yet is the best form of government in the world, because it doesn't reward the lazy and stupid. The problem is when you have equality and allow people to their own devices, you end up catering to the lowest common denominator. And, humanism is that. You're basically taking God out of the picture, but then replacing God with yourself. Basically, you're taking a set of structured ethics, throwing it out the window and saying, I have my own ethics. But these people aren't willing to admit that their ethics are flawed. It's humanism. They're all flawed. If you ever read the tenets of humanism, where they went over them, holy crap, it's a nightmare. It's debauchery at its finest. And when you start really understanding that, you'll realize that people need boundaries. People need a core. People need something that they can lean on. And that is why, Christian ethics, even the atheists will admit that ethical Christian way of living, even if you remove the deity, the process is still better than anything they've come up with. This idea, whether you believe in God, was what's brought us all of this. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about, that humanism is just an intellectual dead end. And what ends up, I heard it the best when you start arguing with people about this. The libertarian and the Christian will start fighting over who has the sword or who has control, and then the progressive will grab the sword and kill both of them. It's that simplistic. But humanism is basically just intellectual atheism, and it's libertarianism with an atheistic twist. Of course, you really can't be you can't claim to be a Christian libertarian, because the two philosophies don't match. Just like you can't claim to be a Christian humanist, because the two philosophies don't mesh. So, yeah, that's what's been going on here. That's food for thought.